Happy Friday, everyone. It's Marius here from Sore Thumb. In today's video, I want to tackle one of the most potentially confusing aspects of video production, and that's music licensing. When we talk about music licensing, really what we're talking about is obtaining permission to use a piece of music in our project. That's basically it. That's all it is. Where it gets complicated is that there are different kinds of licenses, and these can kind of constrain when and how we can use the music. But fundamentally, that's all we're talking about when we're talking about music licensing, is making sure we have permission to use that piece of music in our project. So, obvious next question, when do you need a license? The answer to this one is also very simple. Always. You always need a license. If you're using a piece of music, or any piece of art really, in your videos, you need to have a license to use it, because it's not yours. Think of when you go to rent a car, for instance. You don't go to the rental person and say, well, I'm not going to pay for this car because I'm using it for non-commercial purposes. Or I'm not going to pay for it because I'm only using it for 30 seconds. That's not how it works. It's not your car, so you got to pay to use it, regardless of what the circumstances are. It's the same with music licensing. It's worth emphasizing the difference between licensing and ownership, because this is where things tend to get confusing for people. When you've licensed a piece of music, it's not yours. You don't own it. You simply have permission to use it. And this is where a lot of myths come into play. So for instance, if I think, oh, well, I've credited the artist so I can use the music. No, it's not yours. Or you say, well, I bought the CD so I can use the music. Well, again, no, it's not yours. There's a difference between having a copy of the music and having permission to use it. And that's the key distinction to bear in mind with all of this. This leads me to the biggest myth about music usage, and it's called fair use. It's a thing that people think they can use to get out of having to license music, but that's not how it works. Fair use, or fair dealings, or it has different names in different parts of the world. It's a legal defense, which means if you're relying on fair use, it's because you're already in court, you've already been sued, and you've already infringed someone's copyright. It's not something that you want to go into a project with as a mentality. Fair use is basically a set of very, very narrow exceptions where you are able to use a piece of music without licensing it, but it's determined on a case-by-case basis, and it's not something that you go into a project expecting to use because, again, it's a legal defense, it's not a process. Now, obviously, we live in the real world. It's very unlikely that you are going to be sued for using a random pop song on your friend's wedding video. But I think it's important to understand that when you do something like that, you are breaking the law, you are infringing that artist's copyright, and while you may not be sued for it, it's important to understand that you've put yourself and your business and potentially even your clients at risk. So tread carefully. All right, so let's say I've scared you, you want to be perfectly legal. What are your options? Well, the easiest one is to try and obtain a license for the piece of music that you intend to use. This is easier said than done because you have to deal with the labels or you have to deal with the artists, and honestly they can be kind of difficult to reach, and you can expect to pay more money than you probably want to for the privilege. So, okay, that's probably not realistic unless you're working with a big commercial budget. All right, so if you can't obtain a license for the piece of music that you intended to use, what other choices do you have? Well, one choice is to hire an artist or a composer to write a piece of custom music for you. This gets you arguably the best results because it's something that's custom tailored to your project, but of course it incurs its own expenses and it can be time consuming because the artist has to actually take the time to write that music. What most people do, and particularly in the fast-paced world of vlogs and of agency videos and things like that, we rely on things called music libraries. And a music library is basically a vast catalog of music that is called royalty-free music. You've probably heard the term before. Royalty-free is just a kind of license. Basically, you pay one fee and then you have permission to use that music for your project, and you don't have to renew that license or pay licenses for different kinds of usage or anything like that. It's just a blanket license that grants you that permission for one fee. And the way that music libraries work is they typically don't even charge you per piece of music. They charge you a monthly fee or a yearly fee or something like that for access to licenses to use all of the music in their catalog, which is amazing because it means that, okay, I've got a project, I can suddenly start cruising through their list of thousands and thousands of tracks in all sorts of different genres, find something that matches or find 2 or 3 pieces of music and not have to worry about incurring costs for each one individually. Now, there are tens of these music libraries out there. We happen to use one called Soundstripe. If you want to find out a little bit more about how it works, you can visit sorethumb.co/music, where you'll also be able to take advantage of a 20% discount on a Soundstripe account if that's something that's useful to you. So, music licensing in a nutshell. What is it? Permission to use the music. When do you need it? Always. How do you get it? With difficulty, with money, or with music libraries. That's all for this week. We'll see you in the next one.